Hello, and welcome to our DVD series on aEEG in the neonatal population. My name's Judy Moore. I'm working as the International Clinical Product Marketing Manager with Natus Medical Incorporated and working within our newborn care portfolio and specifically our newborn brain injury. In addition, I'm a qualified advanced neonatal nurse practitioner and have been practicing in the neonatal field for the last 25 years, specifically with an interest in newborn brain injury and the neonatal brain. And it's my pleasure to spend some time with you now walking through the benefits of aEEG monitoring and the benefits of the Olympic Brains monitor itself. There are many benefits to using limited channel aEEG in your neonatal intensive care units, and many patients who will appreciate and benefit from this application at the bedside. Remember, aEEG is the tool designed by neonatologists for use at the bedside for continuous trended monitoring in the neonatal intensive care unit. There are many groups of patients who benefit from such monitoring. Specifically with aEEG monitoring, we can look and detect, is there neurological injury? If so, what is the severity of that injury? Is that injury improving or worsening over time? And we can look and easily see any seizure activity, specifically subclinical seizure activity, that we may not see or recognise physically in the baby. There are many other applications of aEEG monitoring, including premature babies, babies post-surgery, babies born who are suffering neonatal abstinence syndrome, any baby with suspected seizures, and of course specifically that group of infants with hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy who may benefit from hypothermia treatment. I'd like to spend some time walking through the benefits of the Olympic Brains Monitor limited channel aEEG device. The main benefit of the Olympic Brains Monitor is that we have several views, 3 channels that we can look at, both individually the left or the right side of the brain, or by choice we can look at the cross-channel view and look at the P3, P4 application to determine specific or normal brain injury and brain pattern. At the bottom view, we can choose to see either continuous EEG, and again, 3 channels of this raw EEG data, or we can look and see our impedance view. And impedance alerts are extremely important in determining correct application and good application of those electrodes to the infant's head. On the aEEG trace itself, we have our CFM site or our grayscale application. With CFM site, we have greater insight into that aEEG trace, with the darkest points being where most of the microvoltage activity has actually been occurring. In addition, the Olympic Brains Monitor can be networked. It can be linked to your hospital information system, and therefore, with a networked monitor, so long as you can log on from any point into your hospital system, you can view real-time what is happening in your neonatal intensive care at the bedside. So whether you be in your consulting office, in your home office, or wherever you are, you have access to the monitor and that important information on the status of your baby's brain. With specific online help facilities, it makes this monitor very easy to use, easy to apply at the bedside, even for the most inexperienced bedside nurse who has not received specific training. Finally, with 2 specific softwares, automatic background pattern classification and recognized seizure software detection, we have even greater insight into exactly what is happening with that infant's brain. And we'll cover those features later in this chapter. For now, I'd like to spend some time talking to you and showing you our portfolio and how to apply electrodes to an infant's head in the correct position. When considering which electrodes to use on your infant, you may want to think about special clinical considerations. including the acuity of the baby, the state of the skin, and anything else that might obscure the infant's head. When choosing hydrogel electrodes, we need to consider the preparation supplies we need, such as the electrodes themselves, which come in a packet with 5 electrodes, gauze, new prep gel for skin preparation, cotton tips, water or saline for removing the skin prep gel, and also a comb or maybe a toothbrush for parting the infant's hair. Additionally, we want a positioning aid to ensure that we have those electrodes in exactly the correct position. Low impedance needles come as a packet of 4, and they're inserted subdermally under the infant's skin. Preparation supplies are slightly different in that we need something to clean that infant's skin with, such as iodine or alcohol or whatever your local hospital protocol determines. We also need some tape to secure the electrodes, maybe a wrap hat, and again a positioning aid to ensure that the electrodes are in the correct position on the infant's head. At that point, I'd like to show you how to use the positioning aid to find those marks C3, P3 and C4, P4 on the infant's head in order for good electrode application. The positioning aids supplied with the Olympic Brains monitor have 2 specific anatomical reference points. The first reference point being the sagittal suture and the second reference point being the ear tragus. Firstly, we need to find those 2 reference points anatomically on our infant: ear tragus and sagittal suture. Take your positioning guide and with the ear tragus point obviously at that anatomical reference and the sagittal suture point at that anatomical reference, we want to line up the same letter at each point on the positioning guide. In the case of this infant, the letter C is equivalent at the ear tragus and at the sagittal suture point. This makes the front and back of this arrow the correct position to apply our electrodes. And using a surgical marker pen, I'm going to mark front and back of the arrow in order to determine the appropriate position. Once I've made those marks, it's time to apply my electrodes. Again, I have the choice of both hydrogel and needles. In the case of choosing hydrogel electrodes, it's very important to make sure that we've prepared the skin ready for application of the electrode. Preparation of the skin is very important to ensure that the impedance is not high when connecting to the Olympic Brains monitor. If choosing hydrogel electrodes, there will be 5 electrodes on the packet strip, 4 of which can be applied to the infant's head, and the 5th electrode is applied to a cleaned area at the back of the shoulder of the baby as a ground or reference point. In the case of choosing needle electrodes, there are 4 electrodes per packet. This gives us the option to apply 2 or 4 to the infant's head in the anatomically marked positions using the positioning guide, but again, a reference electrode is needed, which will always be hydrogel. We will never use a needle electrode as our ground or reference point at the back of the shoulder. Once we've chosen that electrode and we've applied them to the baby's skin, it's time to connect them to the data acquisition box. The data acquisition box supplied with the Olympic Brains monitor is clearly marked with the C3, P3 and C4, P4 positionings, allowing you to correctly insert the electrodes at the appropriate point. This is simply done by taking your electrode and plugging it to the bottom of the data acquisition box. So now we've made our choice of electrodes and we've attached them to the data acquisition box, now it's time to start recording. And recording using the Olympic Brains monitor is a very simple process. We simply select the record icon, enter your patient information, whether that's patient ID, patient name, patient date of birth, however you want to. Click Next. Choose how many electrodes you've applied to the baby's head and start recording. Once you've started the recording process, it will do a self-check of that data acquisition box and also do a signal quality check. In your signal quality check, it's actually going to check your impedance view, which we see at the bottom here. Our impedance is measured in kilo ohms, and our signal is shown in the green signal box at the top of the page here. Once we've started the live recording, you see your impedance status view to the side. That impedance status view should be green to indicate good impedance and good electrode quality application. In the case that the electrode contact is not good, this would illuminate yellow or red and would indicate to us exactly which electrode is causing us the problem in order that we take care to solve the problem with that specific electrode. In addition, we can change this impedance view to our raw EEG view at the bottom of the screen. Finally, we can swap between the two-channel view that we see right now to the cross-channel view, where we will have one single channel of aEEG data, measuring between the P3 and P4 region. Continuing and adding to a patient file from a previous recording is very simple. And I'm going to stop this right now by simply pressing the Stop Recording button. I'm going to close this patient file, and then I'm going to choose to open a different one, for example, a baby that I monitored yesterday. Once that's reloaded, I can resume recording or create a new session in that patient file. And I resume the recording, or I can create a new session for that baby, again, choosing the number of electrodes that I've actually applied to that patient. Again, the same thing will happen in that it will check our impedance quality status and it will start the monitoring for us. At this point, I can look back through the patient data that has been previously recorded. And again, providing that in the previous recording we had 5 electrodes on, I could toggle between the cross-cerebral view and the left and the right individual views. Using my scroll bar, I can scroll backwards and forwards and look at that baby's brain. And I can also use the automatic softwares that are contained within the monitor. My 2 automatic software options are Recognise software, which is automatic seizure detection, and Background Pattern Classification software. And the installation of these is indicated on the screen at the side. By activating my markers, I can actually show this view where I can see both the background pattern classification and at the point of any point where the baby may have had seizures, I will see my seizure detection also, which is going to show me the points of interest on that baby's aEEG that may be seizure activity, giving me the option to scroll to that point and to evaluate and look at that raw EEG at that point in time where we clearly see seizure activity right now. By scrolling backwards and forwards, I can quickly take a look through that aEEG trace. And now I've restarted that recording so I can continue to build into that patient file to make sure that we have all of the relevant information we need. Finally, I can create any reports that I want to, including any marker text that I may have put on, or my EEG, or my impedance view, which I can easily export, copy, save, or print in order to provide valuable clinical information for the patient record. Finally, to stop this recording and to save to the patient file, I'll simply click Record, stop the recording, and now that information is saved to our patient file. Once you've completed that, that has ended your session. Thank you for listening to the introduction to aEEG and the Olympic Brains Monitor. And now it's time to move to our clinical chapter, which we hope you enjoy and will benefit your clinical practice moving forwards.